Hello and welcome to today's session of PreSales Insight Whiteboarding. Today we want to do some of the basic plays that you need to have in your playbook. In today's session we will use a physical whiteboard. We will manage the space and we add up the different parts of the play to the board. My name is Sascha Oehl. I'm PreSales leader here in Europe. And I'm leading pre-sales organizations in the technical selling process, for example. Today, we want to do a play that is very much linked with your daily work. Obviously, you want to sell something to your customer. This is your basic job. To do so, you need to be very clear where the customer is and where do you want to move him. This comes along with a timeline, with blockers that you need to address, with actions that you want to drive. To make this more visible for a customer, we can use the whiteboard. In the whiteboard itself, you can bring in a level of detail depending on the size of your customer. If you're dealing, for example, with a multinational account, you probably cannot put in every single system on the whiteboard. If you're dealing with a smaller one, you can probably write each system on the wall. Nevertheless, the play works. In the one hand side, you will probably simply paint down a location and a number of systems. In another one, you will paint the system itself. For our journey today, we will use the whiteboard in behind. In the beginning, the space looks infinite. But as you are aware, if you start scribbling on the wall, it could squeeze and squeeze and squeeze more to the end. To avoid this, we will start with managing the space. In the slide you see now, you can see how we want to use the space that we have. We want to use a headline where we put in what we're doing from now to tomorrow, and we will define in the headline when this tomorrow is. More importantly, we will use the lower space. We will describe today's model of operations. So what is the IT infrastructure looking like today? Then we're describing how it could look like in the future. We add this up with some blockers or obstacles that we want to tackle and actions that we need to drive to get to the desired outcome. Now, let's get back to the whiteboard. In our example, we are probably working today with a storage vendor that is selling storage to a company working in different locations or countries. The first thing that we're doing is either the use, for example, like these small magnet things, or we simply use a pencil to put in some barriers for ourselves. Like the upper part, we want to separate the upper part for the headline. Therefore, we could either use like a small dash that we put on the wall, or we could put a magnet there. This could act as a barrier for ourselves to know which space is blocked for which purpose. In the example now, I'm using the magnets because they are a bit easier to see on the video as they are quite colorful and quite dotty. So we decided to put the upper part as the headline. Then we planned having like the third of the whiteboard to describe the today's model of operations. This is important for us because this could get more and more bigger. So let's say a third is roughly here, and this would give us an imaginary line going simply down to there. Now you can see it gets a bit structure. We've got a headline space, we've got a space for the today's session, and here we need the actions, the obstacles and the future. So we block the obstacles, we block the actions, which gives us here a space for the future. Now have a look at the board, and you will see we are probably a bit too squeezy on the left. So let's simply move it a bit to give it some more space to describe where we are. That's basically structuring the space. For us, it's now clear what we do in which of the segments that we see on the wall. Now let's start with the talk with the customer. So in the beginning, we have explained the customer what we want to do today. We want to discuss where we are and how the future could look like. First thing to note is you put in a headline right on the top. Let's call it From Now to Tomorrow. If you're not writing perfectly, if your letters are not the perfect shapes and you're not the graffiti type person, it's pretty good to use uppercase letters. They're usually easier to read, even if you have not the best writing like I am. So this is the headline, From Now to Tomorrow. So the next thing is that we discuss with the customer what's the today model that they're using. Maybe you come up with a lot of information that you already have in your pocket. Maybe you need to discover all of it. Regardless which mode you're using, bring the customer into this step to confirm and to add, because otherwise it could be simply your story which is not linked to the customer anymore. Let's say the customer is using today 3 locations. That makes it a bit easier. We've got a location A, a location B, and a location C. This gives us a platform for what we are doing now. Now we want to discuss about this storage that they're using. Let's say they're using some storage, vendor A, 100 terabyte, vendor B, 500 terabyte flash, vendor C, 1000 terabyte HDD. Don't take these numbers too precise, it's just for the working mode here. So then we talk about how many arrays do you have from vendor A, B and C to cover all of this. Let's say vendor A is doing the job with 1 array, vendor B with 4, vendor C has 5 arrays. Now you could discuss about the structuring here. Let's say number, but don't put too much information on the wall. Otherwise it gets messy. So let's say A and B is mirrored to location B. Then we have like 4, vendor B, 500 terabyte flash. You see I'm hitting the line here, but it's still okay-ish. And the 1 is also here. The vendor A, 100 TB. Now this is basically what it looks like. We make here probably a small mirror link. Maybe you decide to draw differently. That's your choice. In the C location, we have replicated the colder storage. The 5 arrays of vendor C with 1000 terabyte HDD. So I've got a link here. And this is basically how it looks like in your current environment. That's the baseline. It's a simple one, but for now we can work with it. What is the next step? Obviously, you have prepared for the meeting. You know about the performance requirements here. You know about the business requirements that is driving the customer. So maybe these workloads needs to be separated from each other, and so on. In our case, it's a bit simpler. The vendor C stuff needs to be separated because this is cold data. This is the last line of defense that they're using if everything goes wrong. For the purpose of vendor A and vendor B, it's simply the access protocol. Let's say vendor A was like file access, CIFS, NFS, SMB. The vendor B was more the block access, fiber channel. And it's separated just because of the history. The number of arrays in our example is simply driven by the performance requirements. That is where the controller here became the bottleneck in before. Now you move on into the future. So what do you suggest? You suggest we put basically in location A one array with file and block for the stuff of vendor A and vendor B. To give the customer enough capacity, this is 600 terabyte, and we're looking a bit into the future, we designed it to have 750 terabyte. The next step will be we replicate this into the second location. Again, file, block, and also here we use 750 terabyte. Obviously, we put some marks here. This is location A, this is location B. And provide a replication between it. Now we have to sort this little chap. This little chap is 5 systems with 1000 terabyte in sum. And here we need like 2 arrays to cover it, like 400 and 600 because of business requirements for this case. In that case, we would probably put in here another array and another array. We call it object in our case, which is like object and object. And we said we need 600 terabyte plus a bit of growth. We make this 700 and this like 500 terabyte. Now we need a location C, obviously. And you see the thing that I mentioned with managing the space. It could get easy that it all get messed up. And again, this is object 700, 500. And again, this replicates. This will be our future mode. Now, obviously, you bring in some benefits. And you should put the benefits on the screen, even if it's all clear and all visible. Like, we can use, additionally, like dedupe. And we plan with a 2-to-1 ratio. We provide a unique management. One management interface for the whole solution. And we have flexibility between block and file. flex, cap, block, and file. Now you see, we've got all the stuff with the future mode and the benefits together in our sector 4. What could block us? Why could the customer decide not to move forward? And this is one of the things that you always need to be very aware of. In our case, the customer has 3 major things. The first is data migration. The second is training. And after the training, the third thing that could hold him back is very easily the timeline. So he had some time pressure to move forward, and he needs to act now. On the other side, there are some actions that we want to define to make this happen. So what could we do for tackle data migration, training, timeline? What actions could we bring in? So the first thing that we want to do is a POC for migration. The second thing is we want to help him with some professional services on site. On-site training offer. And the third one, the timeline, is the hardest because it's basically completely on the customer side. But what we could bring in is 2 things: experience from other customers and often, of course, project management. So let's put in project management and success infos. Now we're basically ready with our whiteboard. You see, I forgot one headline. This is today, and this is tomorrow. When we now remove the dots here, you still see it's a whiteboard and not everything is perfect, but you can see obviously the basic structure in the board. You also see that we used for different topics here different colors. This also helps us to see the different fields, like actions in greenish, obstacles in a purple tone, and blue and orange for the rest of it. One thing we forgot, it was a step 3. When is our tomorrow? And we think this could be in year now +1. So in your case, probably today is 2021, and this should be 2022 June, as an example. And this will basically drive you into a common understanding where you are right now, where you want to move, with what benefits, the obstacles, and the actions. In the end, take a picture of it, write a summary, and give it to your customer to provide them the insight that they need to drive forward. This is one of the basic plays that you need in your playbook. If you're not 100% happy with it, it's exactly as mentioned in all the other trainings, adjust it. A play needs to fit to your style. simply adjust it to fit to your needs. Thank you for listening and for building your playbook.